our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before. From Al-Manar, Saeed Nasrallah welcomes command delegation. Hamas command delegation. Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah welcomed a command delegation from Palestine's Hamas resistance movement led by Politburo Chief Ismail Haniyeh and Deputy Chief Saleh Arori. The meeting reviewed the key developments in occupied Palestine incidents witnessed at Al-Aqsa Mosque, the escalated acts of resistance in West Bank and Gaza. The conferees also discussed the political developments in the region and the readiness of the axis of resistance to confront the developments as well as the coordinated among its components. From Memo, Hezbollah Hamas leaders meet in Lebanon amid Al-Aqsa tension. Ismail Haniyeh, head of the Hamas Political Bureau, on October 13th. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah held talks on Sunday with Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh amid tension in occupied East Jerusalem, Anadolu reports. Violence rose across the Palestinian territories after Zionist forces last week forcibly removed worshippers from inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex. The Zionist raids on the mosque triggered rockets fired from the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, with Zionists retaliating with air and artillery shelling. A Hezbollah statement with Nasrallah and Haniyeh discussed the latest Palestinian developments, events at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the escalating resistance in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The talks also touched on regional political developments and the readiness of the axis of resistance and cooperation of its parties in confronting all these events and developments, the statement added. The axis of resistance is an anti-Zionist alliance across the region made up of Iranian-backed groups including the Syrian regime, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad group, among others. Haniyeh arrived in Lebanon on Wednesday for a visit that coincided with escalating violence in the occupied Palestinian territories. Hezbollah Hamas leaders discuss readiness of axis of resistance. This is from Press TV. Top leaders of the Palestinian and Lebanese resistance movements have met in Beirut to discuss the latest developments in Palestine following Zionist attacks on worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Ismail Haniyeh, head of Hamas Political Bureau, met with Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah on Sunday, and the two discussed the readiness of the axis of the resistance and their cooperation after the recent events. The meeting was held amid ongoing tensions through the occupied territories following the Zionist regime's brutal assault on Palestinian worshippers who were observing the holy fasting month of Ramadan at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Heavily armed Zionist forces stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque on Tuesday night, firing tear gas and stun grenades into the Qibla prayer hall, where hundreds of men, women, elderly people, and children were staying overnight to pray. Some eyewitnesses said rubber-coated steel bullets were also fired. The Zionist forces violently beat up worshippers with batons and riot guns, wounding many and arresting about 500 Palestinians. Videos from inside the mosque showed Zionist troops repeatedly hitting people with batons as they lie on the floor. Cries for help from women and children could be heard in the background. Since the start of the holy month, the Zionist regime has imposed strict restrictions on the entry and exit of Palestinians to and from the gates of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Zionist settlers have also pressed ahead with their frequent incursions and provocative rituals at the holy site. Retaliating against the Zionist aggression, resistance fighters based in Gaza fired rockets at the occupied territories. On Thursday, at least 30 rockets were reportedly launched from southern Lebanon into the Zionist-occupied territories in retaliation for the Zionist raids. The Zionist regime's warplanes bombed Gaza and southern Lebanon, but it avoided going further in fear of sparking a wider conflict. Saeed Nasrallah Haniyeh discussed Palestinian developments. Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah meets with Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, and the leaders discussed the latest developments in occupied Palestine. Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah received on Saturday Hamas, the chief of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, and his deputy, Saleh al-Aruri, both of whom were heading a Hamas delegation. Saeed Nasrallah discussed with the Hamas delegation the latest developments in occupied Palestine and the incidents that were taking place in Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the uptick in resistance in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah's media relations official said in a statement. The parties to the meeting discussed the latest political developments, as well as the preparedness of the axis of resistance and the coordination and cooperation of all of its members in the face of the latest challenges. The meeting comes in light of tensions in Al-Aqsa Mosque over the continuous Israeli raids against it, as well as the brutalization of Palestinians stationing themselves in the holy site. The Zionist occupation forces on Sunday turned the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque into military barracks in a bid to provide protection for the illegal settlers storming the Muslim holy site on the fourth day of Passover. The Islamic Endowments Department in Al-Quds said scores of settlers stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque in groups from the Moroccan Gate, adding that they carried out provocative tours and performed some rites under the protection of the Zionist occupation forces. Occupied Al-Quds has witnessed stark tensions since the onset of the week, which kicked off the Zionist occupation raiding the holy site and assaulting the Palestinians who are stationed there as part of the religious practice of itikaf. The IOF's provocation sent settlers into a frenzy, with Zionist media reporting that the current situation resembled the time leading up to the Saif al-Quds battle, adding that an incident in Al-Aqsa could also be dragged into a wide confrontation this time. The first round of aggression spurred up a week of Zionist violence and Palestinian confrontation that spread all over the occupied state in various forms, from rallies to resistance operations. The raids have drawn international condemnation and sparked concerns with the Zionist occupation about the severity of the security situation and how the occupation's actions were backfiring. And that's from Al-Mayadeen. Also from Al-Mayadeen, Israeli, I'll rephrase that, Zionist media comment on Nasrallah Haniyeh meeting. Zionist media are discussing the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Saeed Hassan Nasrallah's meeting with a delegation from Hamas, emphasizing its importance. The Zionist media touched on the meeting that brought together the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Saeed Hassan Nasrallah, with a delegation from the Hamas movement, which included the head of the political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, and his deputy, Saleh al-Aruri. The Zionist Makan channel discussed the tripartite meeting between Nasrallah and Ismail Haniyeh and this deputy, Saleh al-Aruri, in Beirut, noting that the two sides discussed the readiness of the axis of resistance and cooperation between the participating elements in confronting all developments. For his part, Hezi Simintov, the Arab Affairs correspondent of the Zionist Channel 13, considered that the meeting's importance lies in coordinating positions between Hamas and Hezbollah, and that its aims to spread unity in the axis of resistance, Syria, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah, while also coordinating positions between Nasrallah Haniyeh and al-Aruri. As for the Arab Affairs correspondent at Khan Channel, Roy Kayes, he described the importance of this meeting, adding that the resistance axis, readiness, and its dealings with developments were discussed. According to Kayes, the idea is around the unity of the squares, noting that he saw a map on Al-Mayadeen TV which included occupied Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. Channel 13 also commented on the picture, in which everyone appears to be smiling, and indicated that the photo suggests that Nasrallah doesn't live in a hideout, also emphasizing that the photo portrays unity, according to Arab Affairs analyst Avi Issacharov. With regard to the joint picture of Saeed Nasrallah with the delegation of the Hamas leadership, Channel 12 considered that Saeed Nasrallah with this picture poked the Zionist's eye, explaining that this picture is worth more than 1,000 words. At the same time, Tai Lev-Ram, a military affairs commentator for the Ma'ariv newspaper, wrote that the security and military establishment's warning came true, implying that all the different threatening areas could coalesce during the month of Ramadan. He also pointed out that the Zionists have felt in recent days a very small dose of the characteristics of a multi-stage confrontation. Saeed Nasrallah on Saturday received Haniyeh, his deputy al-Aruri, and the movement's leadership delegation. He reviewed with the Hamas delegation the most important developments in occupied Palestine, the course of events in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the escalating resistance in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, according to a statement released by Hezbollah's media relations office. Likewise, the meeting discussed the latest political developments in the region, the resistance axis readiness, and the unified stance of parties in the face of all these events and challenges. The meeting comes in light of escalations in Al-Aqsa Mosque due to the occupation's attacks on worshippers inside the mosque and the occupation and settler incursions into its courtyards. Clashes erupted on Saturday between Palestinian youths and the Zionist occupation forces in Jenin, Beit Lahm, and Nablus in the occupied West Bank. Earlier, Saeed Nasrallah confirmed that the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia is in the region and its people's interest, and primarily the neighboring countries, especially Syria and Palestine. From Al Arabiya News, Hezbollah and Hamas chiefs meet in Beirut. Statement. The leaders of the armed movements Hezbollah and Hamas have met in Beirut to discuss the readiness of the axis of resistance against Israel, a Hezbollah statement said Sunday. Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the Palestinian movement Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip, has been in the Lebanese capital since Wednesday. Zionists blamed Hamas for firing 34 rockets the following day toward its territory from southern Lebanon, the stronghold of the Iran-backed Shia movement Hezbollah. Zionists' army retaliated early Friday with strikes on both southern Lebanon and Gaza after rockets targeting Zionists were also fired from the coastal enclave. During Haniyeh's meeting with Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, the pair discussed the readiness of the axis of resistance and cooperation between its members in the face of recent developments, the Hezbollah statement said. The axis of resistance refers to Lebanese, Palestinian, Syrian, and other Iran-backed groups opposed to Zionists. The two also discussed the intensification of resistance in the West Bank and Gaza and events at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, according to the statement, which did not specify when they met. On Wednesday, Zionist police stormed the prayer hall of Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site, in a pre-dawn raid, they said, aimed at dislodging law-breaking youths and masked agitators who had barricaded themselves inside. Following the strikes on Lebanon and Gaza, Zionists announced early Sunday it had struck targets in Syria in response to 6 rockets fired from Syrian territory. The army said 2 rockets landed in the Zionist-occupied Golan Heights, while air defense system intercepted at least 1. On Friday, an Italian tourist was killed and 7 other people wounded when an Israeli air plowed a car into pedestrians on Tel Aviv's seafront. In an earlier attack on Zionist settlers in the occupied West Bank, 2 British-Israeli settlers, Zionist sisters, were killed and their mother seriously wounded when their car was fired on in the Jordan Valley. From Aram Online, Hezbollah and Hamas chiefs meet to review Israel-Palestine violence. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah met with Ismail Haniyeh, head of the political bureau of Hamas, to discuss ongoing violence in Palestine, according to a statement issued by the Lebanese party on Sunday. Haniyeh, who arrived in Beirut on Wednesday, met with Nasrallah and reviewed the most important developments in occupied Palestine, the course of events in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the escalating resistance in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The 2 leaders also discussed the political developments in the region, the readiness of the resistance axis, and the cooperation of its parties in confronting all these events and developments. The exiled Hamas leader has visited Lebanon several times in recent years, where he usually meets Nasrallah. The impetus for the meeting was the escalation in violence that erupted last week after Zionist police raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque on Wednesday, firing tear gas and stun grenades to disperse hundreds of Palestinians who were participating in itikaf, the religious practice of seclusion inside mosques commonly observed during Ramadan, and arrested 350 of them. In the aftermath, Palestinian factions vowed to launch revenge attacks, with Haniyeh confirming on Thursday from Lebanon that the factions would not stand hands tied in the face of Zionist aggression on Al-Aqsa Mosque. On Thursday, at least 34 rockets were fired from southern Lebanon towards Zionist-occupied Palestine. The Zionists shot down most of them, attributing blame to Palestinian factions, likely Hamas or Islamic Jihad. On Friday, the Zionist army carried out airstrikes on the Gaza Strip and a small number on southern Lebanon. On Saturday night, the Zionist army announced that it had launched ground and airstrikes on sites in Syria in retaliation for the firing of missiles from Syria towards the occupied Golan Heights. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that the Zionist bombardment targeted Syrian army sites in the southern governorates of As-Suwaida, Dara, and Quneitra. At the same time, Zionists are in the midst of deploying security reinforcements in the wake of two attacks on Friday that killed 3 people, an Italian tourist and 2 Zionist British sisters, in Tel Aviv and the occupied West Bank. On Saturday, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reported that a Palestinian youth was killed by Zionist forces in the northern West Bank. And from Al Mayadeen, Syed Nasrallah Hania discuss Palestinian developments. Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah received on Saturday Hamas, the chief of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Hania, and his deputy, Saleh al-Aruri, both of whom were heading a Hamas delegation. Saeed Nasrallah discussed with the Hamas delegation the latest developments in occupied Palestine and the incidents that were taking place in Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the uptick in resistance in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah's media relations office said in a statement. The parties to the meeting discussed the latest religion-political developments, as well as the preparedness of the axis of resistance and the coordination and cooperation of all of its members in the face of the latest challenges. The meeting comes in light of tensions in Al-Aqsa Mosque over the continuous Zionist raids against it, as well as the brutalization of Palestinians stationing themselves in the holy site. The Zionist occupation forces on Sunday turned the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque into military barracks in a bid to provide protection for the illegal settlers storming the Muslim holy site on the 4th day of Passover. The Islamic Endowments Department in Al-Quds said scores of settlers stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque in groups from the Moroccan Gate, adding that they carried out provocative tours and performed some rites under the protection of the Zionist occupation forces. Occupied Al-Quds has witnessed stark tension since the onset of the week, which kicked off with the Zionist occupation raiding the holy site and assaulting the Palestinians who are stationed there as part of the religious practice of itikaf. The Zionist occupation forces' provocation sent settlers into a frenzy, with Zionist media reporting that the current situation resembled the time leading up to the Self al-Quds battle, adding that an incident in Al-Aqsa can also be dragged into a wide confrontation this time. The first round of aggression spurred up a week of Zionist violence and Palestinian confrontation that spread all over the occupied state in various forms, from rallies to resistance operations. The raids have drawn international condemnation and sparked concerns within the Zionist occupation about the severity of the security situation and how the occupation's actions were backfiring. And from Al Jazeera, actually, let me remind you here that your engagement through a like, a share, and a sub will accelerate us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that loci is
the whole notion of logic.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Oh, look at me.
I thought you scientists were supposed to keep an open mind.
There's a difference between keeping an open mind and believing something because you want it to be true.
Your friend Spock is a logical man.
The whole notion of logic.
Strewn with gaping defects in logic.
The whole notion of logic.
Reaction.
The whole notion of logic.
Demonstrated our superior weapons, they should have fled.
You mean they should have respected us?
Of course.
Mr. Spock, respect is a rational process. Did it ever occur to you they might react emotionally? With anger?
Doctor, I'm not responsible for their unpredictability.
You do not think like the others. There are no colors to your patterns of logic. There's only
the whole notion of logic. The whole notion of
completely
logic.
Pragmatic. And we poor irrational humans whip them in a fair fight. Now you'll find yourself back among us illogical humans again.
The whole notion
which I
of
find
logic.
eminently satisfactory, Doctor. For nowhere am I so desperately needed. Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic.
The whole notion of
We
logic.
understand how we feel about our life here.
The whole
about
notion
each
of
other.
logic.
Emotions are alien to me. I'm a scientist.
You're gonna leave here without them? Run off on some wild goose chase halfway across the galaxy just because you found a discrepancy in a hydrogen cloud?
Doctor, I'm chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl.
Mr. Spock, you have a remarkably logical and analytical mind.
Thank you.
I prefer the concrete. The graspable, the provable.
You'd make a splendid computer, Mr. Spock.